beautiful way to begin. Thank you, Dr. Aditi Sethi-Brown. I am so excited to have a dear friend and colleague and just fellow heart with legs today with us on finding peace in times of great change. My dear friend will be adding her gorgeousness to this conversation in just a moment. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us. We're on day a million, day, I don't know, it seems like we've been doing this for forever in the best possible way, actually. I think we're on day 15, I'm pretty sure. And so, everybody, if you can actually add your voice to the comments as this beautiful community develops, add your voice to the comments and just tell us where you're hailing from and what your word is right now for today. Deeply blessed to have you along for the ride, and deeply blessed to introduce you to the founder of the Conscious Center for Living and Dying here in Swannanoa, North Carolina, Western North Carolina. Her name is well known by many people in this area because she has helped many people's family members, and her organization has helped many people's family members transition from this body into the great beyond. And I have had the great blessing of being on the board of the Conscious Center for Living and Dying. So if everyone would join me in the comments in welcoming someone who my heart just resonates with deeply. So hi Dawn, hi Teresa, hi Jeannie, hi Diane, hi everyone. Welcome all of you. And Dr. Aditi Sethi-Brown, I am so happy to have you here with us, a fellow. And how we even deepened our relationship is both of us did a TED Talk here in Asheville as well about our passions.
That's right.
So, yeah. So, my love, what is it that we get to have a conversation with you about tonight? And I'm going to ask you a few questions so people can get to know you a little bit. But what is it that called your heart tonight? What was your heart wanting to just share with everyone?
When we spoke, one of the themes that you had been sensing into was the grief of the world that many of us are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so speaking to that some, and then offering one tool of sound and inner transformation to support us as we navigate this time.
Beautiful. You're the perfect person to do it. So I can't wait. In the meantime, we've had a lot happen in our little corner of the world lately. Speaking of worlds kind of collapsing. And I'd love everyone to know, in brief, how did you get to this place where you help people both grieve but also transition? I mean, you're a medical doctor. You worked in settings that medical doctors do. You've had you had patients. So how do you get from there to what we're talking about tonight? I know we could probably spend 2 hours on that, but in brief, and also I want everyone to know that my dear doctor friend also has recently had a father who was an extraordinary medical practitioner pass away. I know that he was also part of your inspiration. Interesting, given the times we're in, that here you are with that deep inspiration on the other side. So my love, take it away. How did you make that journey?
Well, Yeah, it is a long story. And I want to say that today I'm coming to you um, not as a grief expert by any means,
Mm,
um, but as a fellow traveler on this life journey. And I'll offer my personal experiences of the deaths of my father and dear friend, and this massive hurricane, this devastating, environmental loss, and all that comes with that. So I just wanted to name that. But my journey as a physician did not include much grief tending or grief education, to be honest. So I'm
mm,
still very much a student, and I approach this with beginner's mind, you know. Um, but my journey did start in hospice care when I was 17 as a college student, and that those experiences stuck with me as I went through medical training, where there was very little emphasis on death, dying, and grief, and the
right,
impact of letting go of our loved ones or our identities, as we age and the debility that comes with it. There was very little focus on the biopsychospiritual elements of those deaths, the small deaths that we experience in life.
right.
And so now in my work as the director of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, and in having space and time to engage in conversations like this, I get to bring my whole self forth, not just my medical.
Mm,
And so I'm very grateful for that. And that a journey with a young man, Ethan Sisser, was a part of that. Um, a documentary came out about that journey called The Last Ecstatic Days movie. And it really was a catalyst for me launching into this new chapter of my life path.
very cool. And as you guys probably don't know this, but recently, I think a couple of weeks before the hurricane hit, I actually was at a concert with Aditi and her family. I think it was the most adorable thing. It just activated my heart so fully. So I was so happy we started today with music.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So there's stuff going on in the world. I mean, we have dreams, we have hopes. We do that in relationships where we have dreams and hopes for relationships and then they don't work out that way. But we also have a relationship to our community and to the world, like our global community, our immediate community, um, the people that we hope and pray are in leadership. We just have a relationship to the hopes and dreams of all of that. And oftentimes, when what we expect doesn't actually happen, or when the unexpected happens, it's not just that we're surprised, but there's also this feeling. I know for myself, um, I had this relationship, and maybe you guys have been thinking about this in the world, which is why I asked you to do this, to talk about this subject tonight. I had this relationship to Asheville as being this safe little haven, right? Like, it's in the mountains. We don't get tornadoes. We don't get hurricanes. It never happened here. It's kind of why we moved here. It's a beautiful place. It continues to be a beautiful place filled with very soulful, uh, um, generous hearts. And but there was kind of like there was a bunch of expectations that I actually had to mourn. And so, this even tonight, I was I've been holding that in my heart to even know to bring it to the process we're even gonna do, because for me, that's something that in my world, I'm grieving. So what's your relationship to that? And can you bring us through I'll leave it all to you from here, but
Yeah,
that's what I'm bringing to this evening's process.
thank
So I
you.
thought I would share that with you.
Thank you for your vulnerability and honesty.
Mm, yeah,
Always. You know,
thank you.
um, if we love and care for anything in this life, we will grieve. And so, your love of Asheville, um, your love of this community, your love of this land. I know you spend a lot of time in nature. All of those things, and are a part of, have factor into your experience of grief. And there's a writer and teacher and storyteller, Martin Prechtel. I don't know if you've heard of him. I'm still new to his work, but he speaks about this relationship between grief and praise as he dives into indigenous wisdom traditions. And he says they're so intertwined, grief and praise. They're two sides of the same coin. And this quote that I want to share with you as we dive into this topic is that he says, "Grief expressed out loud, whether in or out of character, unchoreographed and honest, for someone we have lost, or country, or home we have lost, is in itself." So that grief is the greatest praise we could ever give them.
Mm.
Grief
Oh,
is praise.
beautiful.
Yeah, grief is praise because it is the
Mm.
natural way love honors what it misses.
Mm.
And so when we speak of grieving the world, I want to share some aspects of grief and offer one supportive way to be with our grief, to move through this life with our grief. What do we do with this intense experience or set of emotions, our emotional response to these letting goes? And for me, sound and music have really been the balm. Shall I keep going? Just keep.
Please do. Well, I will say this, Aditi, that love is actually an expression, or grief is an expression of love. I just, what a wonderful way to look at grief, not as something that is, well, I'll just get through it, or I'll just, I'm going to wait for the day when I get to the other side. Because then, not as an expression of love, but as, it's like pain is bad, And so, from what you just shared, what I'm noticing is I find that the process of grief is also a process for me I mean, there's so many layers to it, but I'm just present to this layer right now, which is kind of clearing the decks so that the new can be revealed. Like, it gets me to the place of void, and when I'm in the void, the new can be revealed. So it's this journey to be revered, that if I don't want to put the judgment of doing it well on it, but if we do it with a certain sense of reverence, to be complete, truly, um, even if it takes, it comes in waves over years, it doesn't even matter. Somehow, what's revealed on the other side is an unknown that blesses us, and a future potential that wasn't even possible before we moved through that journey. So that's what your words conjure in me right now. But yeah, I think I'll leave you to the process you want to take everyone through, and the context. So yeah, thank you for moving that in my heart, Aditi. That's really beautiful. Thank you.
Something you shared resonates deeply with me as I'm navigating the personal journey of not being with my father in the physical, and my dear friend Tara Dyer Gill. My father's name is Kapil Sethi. Is that grief is sort of becoming a companion alongside this journey in a way I've never known to this depth. And I'm still finding out how to relate to it and how to be with it, because I know it's not going away. And so, in our medical system, actually in our modern healthcare system, we get 3 days off in bereavement. I think many corporations only allow 3 days for bereavement. I was so grateful I could take a couple of weeks to be with this reality, this new reality, and to find my way to myself with this new reality, back to myself, and I'm still in that process. So just felt to share that as well in reflection to what you said. Mm-hmm. I think you're muted.
I hear it, and it's funny. Isn't it amazing how just talking about grief, but not in a way where we judge it, it already has permission, and it starts dropping in before we even begin a process, because I honestly, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like we crave it in some, because there's not space to do it with authenticity. It's not like available to us to just go there as a society. And I honestly feel like we we crave it in some way. And also I know everyone grieves in a different way, but even the communal grief, I believe that it brings us together. And I think there's so much to grieve
Mhm.
right now in the world. We have someone that's from Eastern Europe in the neighborhood of Ukraine on
Mm.
tonight, and she's been here every single night of all the 21 days so far, as I know. And imagine that. And I know in this country too, and then just globally, like the way we imagine this world going or hoping that the world goes. So there's something in the collective vulnerability. And I think grief is one of the most vulnerable things we can move through together. Yes.
Absolutely. No,
So,
you're speaking to the various things in our world that we could grieve, the environmental concerns,
right?
the social political unrest, like all the things that you're naming, this loss of hope. I came home, I was traveling in to see my um, family with my mother, actually, who has lost her beloved recently, who's my dad, and to see her family. And I was in England with her, and I came back, and my husband was just sharing that sense of a loss of hope that he had felt, he has been feeling. And that's something to grieve. We have so much, we can become disillusioned, or have experienced moments of a lack of faith or loss of faith, and just honoring that and not judging it. Exactly what you said earlier. Just being with whatever is arising, I think is such a gift we can give each other. And, um, grief is sort of this, like I said, an emotional response. And in a way, you can think of it as a container to hold all of these emotions we may experience in response to the death, whatever we're grieving, and something I just want to name is that it can manifest in different ways. There's emotional reactions, which we speak of often, the sadness, the guilt, the anger, confusion, but then it's also a very physical experience. And so the fatigue and changes in our sleep patterns, they accompany grief, especially acutely. Um, I have definitely experienced the cognitive effects of grief, like inability to linearly think. I was kind of losing that already when I dove into the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, but leaving a lot of my healthcare background, but memory problems, feeling numb, and then this behavioral shifts in how we interact with others, and withdraw from others at times. So I just wanted to acknowledge that those are very real experiences, and it's a full spectrum experience, is what I've found. And there's another thing to be mindful of, is that there's no right way to grieve. I think I'm watching my mother navigate her journey, and she feels like
Mm,
she's still feeling similarly 4 months later. And maybe I
wow.
should, maybe I need to get help, or, and there is a time, there is complicated grief. And if you're debilitated from your grief, absolutely seek professional help. But short of that, it is a natural process. And there are many who say that the 5 stages of grief are sort of debunked, and they don't believe in it. I'm sure you're nodding yes.
Yeah.
That's what I had learned. Those 5 stages were actually the result of research by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a pioneer in the death and dying movement in America, a physician. And she interviewed 200 people, asking them about their responses to their impending death. So their
Mm,
response to their own mortality, real time, as they're facing it. And
yeah.
she gathered a lot of responses. And the most common ones were the denial, bargaining, and acceptance, and all that. But they were never really meant to be for grief per se. But so to think that grief is linear, and that you will move through this stage and that stage, and if you don't move through one stage, oh, I must not be grieving, right? Or I must not be grieving at all. I must be good. I have nothing to grieve, or I'm processing it well. All these things that linear approach to grief can create in our own minds. Um, it's just something to be aware of. And really, grief it fluctuates, and you might have periods of good and calm, and then you might have these wide range of emotions that can all
Yeah.
be in a moment or one moment to the next. But just honoring that reality too, that a lot of emotions can fluctuate. You can have guilt, shame, blame, regret, remorse, anger, of course. And acceptance is an integral piece to the grieving process, is how I've experienced it as well. Just really sitting with and accepting that my father is no longer in the physical. It's almost like unfathomable.
Yeah.
It was an unexpected death. He fell picking flowers from a rock ledge and had a traumatic brain injury. So it wasn't like we had time to prepare for his crossing. So now I'm moving, with acceptance come and all the other range of emotions, like I'm trying to integrate the experience and reconstruct my own identity, as is my mother. It's quite an experience. And I want to say that what I'm finding, so the personal grief from my father's death and my dear friend Tara unexpectedly as well, then the hurricane that hit Ashton, like that's collective grief, as you named.
Yeah.
And they have very similar qualities, and yet they have differences in their response, because we're
Yes.
collectively grieving together the hurricane's impact. And so, yeah, you got to say
Yeah.
something.
Isn't it interesting that the brain is so amazing too, because I've had a few comments from people in the process of the 21 days saying that having a place to process their trauma or a place to do physical exercises with each other and being together almost gave permission for to be able to grieve, that because there's a certain sense of not being alone in it, all of a sudden there's a permission. When a couple of people texted me and said, I haven't been able to look at this thing for years until now. And so isn't the brain amazing at being able to compartmentalize something that's really difficult and because we can't handle it then, but all of a sudden when it's available to us to be able to move through it, here it goes. So,
Mhm.
I'm going to ask everybody tonight that as we move through the this journey, you make yourself available to whatever wants to move through you, because certainly in the presence of someone who's dealt with so much death and dying as you have, both personally and certainly in your professional life, um, there's something about the space that creates just in the beingness, same as anyone who's done some kind of work for a long time. It's like visionaries love to open up to me, and this is, so available. So, Aditi, thank you for being so vulnerable. So where did you want to take us tonight? Where
Yeah,
did you
so
want to take us?
thank you. I want to share with you just one tool that you can return to with all you need is your voice and your vocal cords and air, if you're graced to be able to breathe with ease. Other ways to cope with grief, there are many. I just wanted to name that too. And self-care is essential. I'm finding that to be non-negotiable anymore. So grounding, meditation, contemplation, when I think about grieving the world, I think about what is mine to do. Like, it's overwhelming to think of the grief that abounds, or the reasons to grieve that are boundless, really, right now. And so, what can I focus on? What can I do with the gifts I have, as you so beautifully say? What is in my control to do? I think that's a big part of my question. And joining groups like this, of course, can really support you on your journey. And giving yourself permission to openly grieve, vulnerably be with others in those spaces, I think, are important. And then, sound and music can fall into this, but it's also, to me, just more fundamental and essential to our nature. But it can be a form of creative expression. So finding an outlet for your grief with writing, art, or music, I think those are wonderful tools. I wanted to share one more quote by a priest, Adam Bucko. He shares how contemplation refines our inner knowing. And he says, contemplation is about receptivity, about deep listening, about wrestling with questions like what breaks your heart, what makes you truly alive, and allowing those questions, as well as the pain of the world, to shatter us. When we do that, in the midst of all that we are, we discover that there's something arising deep within. So in my experience of both collective and personal grief now, music has been medicine. And throughout my 44 years on this planet, music has been integral in my relationship, not only with myself, but with my Father and with Spirit, with Creator, with the divine. And I actually haven't spent much time talking about music as medicine. So I'm really grateful to start to articulate briefly some of the gifts of it. And because I've really just shared it in contemplative spaces. So there's a woman, Janavi, who writes these beautiful melodies. And if you get to look this song up, it's called Like a River. And one thing she says is that great saints recommend that in these troubled times, we purify ourselves internally by diving into the river of sacred sound. And transformation takes place from inside out. And we will impact our world around us. And you speak to this. So in very basic terms, research around sound healing and music is really booming right now. The NIH is doing research on this. A friend of mine in Asheville, Joshua Leeds, he specializes in psychoacoustics, the study of the perception of sound. And I am far from that level of understanding. But I just want to briefly remind us that sound is a form of energy. And it travels through mediums, water, air, as a wave and creates vibrations of particles. And we are energy, right? We're matter's made of atoms, and you speak to this eloquently and skillfully. So just remembering and not underestimating the importance of sound and its impact on our physical being, which affects our mental, emotional, spiritual bodies. I was in the airport the other day and I couldn't believe the sound, the music that's playing on everywhere these days. It's a little harsh to me, It doesn't create a relaxing atmosphere, which I would hope for people who are stressed out traveling. And sound is often viewed as a fundamental creative force in the universe by many spiritual traditions, including Hinduism and the ancient Vedic science. This one sound, Om, O-M, actually A-U-M is another way it's written, is considered this primordial vibration that from which all of life emerged. And it helps to harmonize our being as we chant Om it helps us with this greater cosmic rhythm. So just remembering that sound isn't something we just hear with our ears, in our brains. Interpretation of the sound isn't all that there is when we experience sound. It invokes a feeling and an experience. It has the power to heal. And music is really, it's an art form, as I mentioned, and a cultural activity that uses sound as its primary medium of expression. And so you add rhythm and melody and harmony, and when you add different musicians or different instruments playing, it becomes a symphony, And so I just want to share with you Om, the simple primordial sound that you can do anywhere, anytime, any place. And it sounds so basic and simple, but it is a profound experience just to be and to be with that primordial sound and to chant it yourself. You don't have to be a singer. You don't have to even like to sing. You can just do it anyway. And it'll have an impact. We know that music affects mood, reduces stress levels, alleviates pain, even in research studies. It's a powerful tool that I think some of us underestimate, So I would love to invite you to join me in chanting 3 Oms. When we sing, I'm sitting in a different posture. I'm sitting more with my spine aligned and erect, and I start to focus on my breath, and I start to relax my facial muscles, and I just center myself and still my mind. And then I invite you to chant with me. It's really Aum. I'll do that 3 times. And I'm playing an Indian instrument called the harmonium. And you don't need one to chant Om. You can do it in the bathroom while you're cooking dinner. My nickname my father gave me was Gungun. It means humming. So I hum all the time. All right, so we'll do 3 Oms together.
So beautiful. Isn't it wonderful to even conjure the hundreds of people that are going to listen to this and harmonize outside of time space? Really outside of time space with the sound that created all of creation. I mean, just the thought of that is just ticklish, A. B, there's something about making a joyful noise that, um, especially such a significant word, I guess, is the thing I'm gonna call it, word. Such a significant word that really makes all else not that important. Right? So your father called you Gungun?
Yes, my nickname.
Yes. That's so
It's
cute.
I lived into that.
Clearly you did. I have to say that, I suspect there's gonna be a lot of people oming tomorrow in their car. And I really appreciate I'd love it for can everyone share in the comments what it was like to do that? Because we can't hear each other, but did you make yourself available to actually hear each other like, you know what I mean? Hear with yourselves rather than hear with your ears? Because after all, sounds are also carried on scalar waves, which don't require ears, you guys. So just put in the comments how that felt to you and what you want to express to Aditi tonight about sharing such a sacred and important part of her life with you guys. Um, yeah. Yeah, I imagine you Catherine's a fellow Western North Carolinian. So, as you know Catherine Brewer.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, she's a volunteer, I think, at the center. Yeah, and so Aditi, are there as we move through these I don't imagine that things are going to get less perceptively intense. Perceptively. I mean, we engage it or we don't engage it, so that's really the key. But what do you want to say from the perspective of moving through hope that then looks like it's not going to come to reality? What perspective can you offer around that before we close for the evening around the hopes that disappear sometimes, and may for the coming years? How do we relate to that differently, from your perspective to offer some freedom?
Thank you for that question. There's something lingering to add. Just even if you don't want to ohm, I think using your own sound to wail, to moan, to groan, just to release energy and move the energy with sound as an ally, a tool, I think is so helpful. But back to your question. I've been very intentional in my life of not being divisive and contributing to divisiveness. And it's a very fine line when you're passionate about something and believe in something.
Mm-hmm.
And with all that's unfolded and all the shock of the hurricane and the collective grief around politics and the unrest in the world, what I've come back to is this idea of beginner's mind. And that is a term that you could define as sort of this conscious choice to a conscious temporary suspension of judgment, of preconceived notions, of acting or feeling like you are the knower, that you know the best outcome. So it's really being a clean slate and open channel when things feel so overwhelming and beyond our control. So beginner's mind, cultivating beginner's mind is something I've been sitting with the last few weeks.
Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone, I want you to join me, please, if you feel so called, just to offer your recipe. Many of you have already offered some words of thanks to Aditi. Of course, in the coming days, we'll be meeting some other beautiful souls, many from Asheville. I invited lots of people from Asheville. And I just encourage you to go and check out the Conscious Center for Living and Dying as well. When you come to the next embodiment workshop, hopefully, all the hotels will be, active, and the restaurants and all of that. And so when you come the next time, I encourage you to check out that beautiful sanctuary and consider that there is another way. I'm very proud to be a board member there, and to consider that there's another way that people can transition to the other side. If you're so called, make a donation, because it is not only a place, but it is also a movement. And it's catalyzing a bridge that's being built to another possibility for how we partake in such an incredibly important part of our lives, because the process of dying is part of life. So, I want to thank you, sweet friend, so much. Truly, thank you for bringing us one of your beautiful gifts, and thank you for spreading the love and the spaciousness to be able to honor all of the emotions as a human being.
Thank you for the invitation, Jennifer.
Yeah. So wonderful to have you. And so in the truest, so everyone, if you want to go back and listen, or if you want to share this with someone, you guys know where to go. You go to the Wide Awakening YouTube channel. It's just YouTube. Adam will probably put the link in the comments, but you go to the YouTube and just search for the Wide Awakening. You'll see all of the 15 days that we've done so far. I really encourage you to actually listen to Greg Linthrop, who was so good at Aditi. He was just, yeah. There's a lot of people that fell in love with Greg that night, let me say. So, I know. So, and I really encourage you guys to listen to I think it's day 6 on carrying. And certainly if you haven't got the full perspective, go and check out day 1. This series is to be shared. It's to be shared. It's to be spread. It's to be It's to be communicated. It's to be liked. It's to be followed. It's to be just, it's like a love bomb. So just let the sparkles fly to whomever you would like to, light the heart of. And yeah, so grateful for everyone being here tonight. In the truest sense of the word, Miss Aditi, I would like to bid you good night by saying, truly, with all of my heart, namaste. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world, and know that you are definitely not alone.